long time in our business or in our industry, there has been a division between those who do the work and then those who are engaged in the advocacy or who are speaking about the issue in public. And there are many layers and therefore many filters between our direct experience and those who are actually in the halls of power or on the screens speaking to the decision makers about what needs to happen. And I think that this really became most acutely obvious to us back in 2014 when we did have this so-called surge of families and children who arrived to the border. And this was the first time for us that what was very much what we saw as a niche job, niche work that was really even many immigration attorneys, most immigration attorneys didn't even really understand the work that we did. And beyond being misunderstood, the messaging that we received from those bigger advocacy and narrative shaping organizations, including funders, was that, you don't talk about the first rule about Fight Club, you don't talk about Fight Club. We would be told for any person that might appreciate the work that you're doing, there are 4, 5, 6, 7 people who hate the work that you're doing. So just keep your head down and just do the work. And that is unfortunately how we operated for too many years. What we saw in 2014, when in San Antonio, the government was using Lackland Air Force Base, a military base, to house thousands of unaccompanied children. And we went and we provided services for those kids. We saw politicians walking in for half an hour and then coming out and speaking to the cameras and saying that they understood these children, that they knew that they just wanted to go home. This was politicians on both sides of the political spectrum. So, we are politicized. We are not political. Though what we speak is the truth, it's not political. It's just been politicized. And we understood that people on the right didn't know what they were talking about. People on the left didn't know what they were talking about. People in the middle were just confused. And most of the people involved in this were barred for one reason or another from even speaking about it. So that's when we started to speak up, because we just couldn't stand by and watch these children, these families that we were working with, that we were working for, being lied about. And so we started to speak up. And what we learned was somewhat Promethean, I think, in that summer, was that when we did speak up, this warning that we were going to be pummeled by people who hated what we did, frankly, just didn't materialize. And on the contrary, we received an outpouring of interest and support and thank yous from people who did. And so I think that what lessons we learned was that, for whatever we speak about those who might be against us, we haven't done 5% of the work needed to reach those people who actually do support us. And moreover, there's a hell of a lot more people who support us than we think. And I think we're just starting to learn that.
We are a nonpartisan organization. But when you look at where the polarization is, it is not in the American public. Over 90% of Americans support stronger gun laws, over 80% of gun owners, and over 74% of NRA members. So this is not a contentious issue among Americans. It's a contentious issue in state houses and in Congress because we have a gun lobby. And the gun lobby pays lawmakers to fall in line on certain issues, and this is one of them. So the issue has been that we weren't able to turn out our side. We weren't able to prioritize this as something they voted on for too long. And in fact, after the Manchin-Toomey bill, when we lost that in 2013, basically the bill that we passed today, I can remember Senator Heidi Heitkamp, who was a Democrat, said, I just didn't hear from the other side. I didn't hear from the side that wanted me to pass background checks. And we said to ourselves, we will never let that happen again. We will never let a lawmaker say the reason that they took a cowardly vote was because they didn't hear enough from the other side. And so organizing is a huge piece of that, being able to email and call and mobilize. And we have hundreds of thousands of voters now, or volunteers now on the ground, hundreds of thousands. We have over 5 million supporters. So we can, with an email or a text message or a social media campaign, get people out to put pressure on lawmakers to do the right thing. And the more that lawmakers see that will either have their backs or have their jobs, the more quickly they are to start to move the needle on this position in their own voting. You know, I am so inspired by the people I work with, whether it's the volunteers who have never experienced gun violence in their lives, but they just want to protect other people. We have so many parents who come into the organization because they've had to send their toddler in to do a lockdown drill and essentially hide behind, you know, this very thin piece of plywood as if that would protect them from the spray of an AR-15. But also so inspired by the people who have been impacted by gun violence, by the survivors whose children or family members have been killed, whether by homicide or suicide or even unintentional shootings, who then find the strength to come and fight with us in this movement. And it's all of that that keeps me inspired, but most of all, it's that we are winning. And I do believe, you know, I'm very competitive, but I do believe that we will win on this issue in our lifetime. That doesn't mean that we won't have to have a whole new generation or more being vigilant on this issue and always showing up. Even with Mothers Against Drunk Driving, they've passed all these laws in the 80s. They still have to show up and fight for those laws and protect them. But I am seeing the needle moving on this. I don't believe we're ever going to go back to where gun violence is considered a third-rail issue in American politics. I believe that in the 2020 election, you will see almost every single presidential candidate make this a policy priority, maybe even on the Republican side if Donald Trump is primaried. And to me, that is what is so exciting. It's, you know, I have a gay teen who thinks gay people were always allowed to get married. Like, she doesn't understand that there's this whole history of the fight for marriage equality. And I think gun violence prevention will be very much like that. We are moving so quickly now to being in a place where we can balance the Second Amendment with the responsibilities that go along with those rights. And I want to make that happen sooner than later because lives are on the line.